What's up, everybody, and welcome to another RCQ vlog. This time for October 19th. We're doing this one a little different. It was a very quick tournament for me, so I didn't really record a video in the moment. It was kind of a strange weekend overall. I actually had a tournament that was 45 minutes away on Friday, so October 18th. Drove out to that tournament, and then it didn't fire. We only ended up having like 3 people there. We needed at least 8 for it to fire. So I hung out, played a couple games with a couple of the folks that were there, and then headed home. So there was nothing to record for the 18th. And then the 19th, we managed to pull together 8 folks, but that was still a single elimination tournament. And in my first round, or first match, I lost. And what I want to do, though, is take a moment, review the deck that I went with, and then we'll talk a little bit about the deck I faced, and then just overall about how I feel about the outcomes of that weekend. So let's go ahead, take a look at the deck that I went into the RCQ with. So if you've been following along, you know that I play Boros Energy. I do have the capacity to also play Mardu Energy. I've done a pretty good job of staying on top of the small meta changes in the sideboard and mainboard strategies. You'll see a traditional Boros Energy package with the 4 Ajani, 4 Amped Raptor, 4 Guided Souls, 4 Ocelot Pride. We also went with 4 Flages, and then we went with something a little different, a little spicier. We went some Skyclave Apparitions. Then we went 3 and 3 on the Galvanic Discharges and Lightning Bolts. We brought the One Ring down from 4 to 2 in the main board. And then over in the enchantments, we're rocking 2 Blood Moons versus 3 Blood Moons, what we were running last time. We split up the removal between Chain to Rocks and Static Prison. Reason for that was some energy conservation. And then we kept the 2 Goblin Bombardments in there. So why did we make some of these changes? This has been the thought that's kind of been going through my head for a while, is you can run the standard Boros package, run 4 of everything, run 4 Galvanics, 4 Lightning Bolts, run 4 One Rings. You know, you would cut the Skyclave Apparitions. Then you can go up to 4 Static Prisons, and then you would probably trim like the Blood Moons, for instance, and that's, you know, a pretty standard Boros package. The problem I'm running into is everybody is building hate for the Boros package. So in order to get around that, you essentially have to almost steal wins. And that's done through a little bit of tech. That's done through a little bit of extra spice or some non-standard cards. That's why I throw in things like Skyclave Apparitions. Blood Moon is starting to become more standard, but Blood Moon is still really good, especially against like the Dimir matchup. If you go to the Eldrazi matchup, it's really nice, and there's a lot of the meta that is in Eldrazi because there's like 4 Eldrazi decks. There's other Jeskai energy decks. You can kind of shut them down. Sometimes you can catch people on surprise in the mirror match if they haven't played like a solid plains or anything like that. You can slam that down, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in mountains and can't play a lot of their creatures until they actually draw a plane. So it can steal some wins for you. It's a nice little card to have. And then I kind of talked about that Chain to Rocks to Static Prison split. They're both enchantments. It's just an energy conservation, and most of the threats that you're capturing are creature threats. So it's not bad, but I still like to have the Static Prison in there to be able to capture an artifact or a random enchantment or something like that I need to get off the board. So that is something to still kind of keep in there. And then the One Ring is really good, but I was trying to create some room for some spice in here, and so I had to make some cuts. And having a couple One Rings there, and then I put a 3rd one in the sideboard, so if I'm in a more grindy match, I can add another One Ring into that. And then if we go take a look at our land distribution, one of the things that I'm doing is running 2 Ether Hubs, which is pretty standard, but I am running 2 Arena of Glories. And I've gotten some feedback recently that running 2 or maybe even none is not super missed. It can catch some wins, especially if you exert it to escape a flage, you can do some really interesting things there. That's kind of what I've been using it for and getting it in early. I also sometimes would like turn 2 exert something like an amped raptor if they had nothing on the board, or if they had something that didn't have first strike with 2 toughness. Being able to do that with amped raptor, swing in with amped raptor, maybe get a creature kill or get in some 2 damage. Was another thing I was doing. So I was leveraging the Arena of Glories, but that might reduce to 1 or even none in the future. Things like the 4 Arid Mesas are pretty standard. A couple Elegant Parlors, pretty standard. I got a distribution of the sack lands here to kind of avoid, like, it's just no real reason. Like, it's to avoid things like Pithing Needle. So being able to sack 3 different types. So I have a Flooded Strand of Marsh Flats and 2 Windswept Heaths. I don't have a 4th one. Otherwise, I would run 4 different ones just to get around it. And then you run your 4 Sacred Foundries, 2 Plains, and a Mountain. So there's definitely some changes that can be done. A reduction of Arena Glory. Some folks are talking about up in the number of planes that you get. Really ensure that you have that way with running Blood Moon to escape the Flage. There's other lands in there too that we were looking at. There is a I have another one here. Is it in the considering? It's not in the considering. Let's see this. Duplicate. Let's take my decks. There was another one that we were talking about. The Sunbaked Canyon. Pay 1 life and I can get a red or a white, and then you can also sacrifice it to draw a card. So that was the other one that we were considering potentially putting into the lands. That being said, what are we doing for the sideboard? So in the sideboard, I grabbed another Blood Moon. That way I can get 3 Blood Moons. I did that to make some room to put the extra 1 ring in here. Normally I was running 2 Blood Moons to be able to have a full 4 Blood Moons in the main deck if I needed to. But the Blood Moons are there really for Dimir, for Eldrazi, 4-color or 5-color decks that are trying to do a bunch of crazy things with like Leyline and having 5 colors on the board. You can reduce them down to 1 color oftentimes, and that's really nice. Damping Sphere, that's playing double duty as well. That one's going to be mostly for the Ruby Storm matchup. That's really nice for any of the Eldrazi matchups. It can also help sometimes with multicolor, but mostly for those 2 is what that's there for. Then we have Fearfire Foes. This is really great in the mirror. It can also be used if you're running a Ruby Storm deck and they do the Goblins. Also the fact that really any ring deck is going to work well against, because it does have that clause in there, damage can't be prevented this turn. And so being able to get around the 1 ring is really what that is for, as well as those mirror matchups or anything that can make a bunch of 1/1. So that is also that Ruby deck where they have the Goblin card. They can create a bunch of 1/1 goblins, and I'll be able to get rid of them. Obsidian Charmaw, that's also for the Eldrazi matchup. Like I said, there's just 4 or 5 Eldrazi decks out there, so you got to be prepared for Eldrazi in a couple different ways. Added another 1 ring to the sideboard for the more grindy matches. I needed a little bit more gas in the tank. That's what we grabbed that for. Thraben Charms are there for the Graveyard Hate. I like the instant speed Graveyard Hate. People would like to say use the Lantern, use a couple other Graveyard Hate mechanics. I really just like being able to do it at instant speed, because you can let them really kind of get their combo going, and then before they dip into their graveyard, you just go ahead and kill their graveyard, and then they can't do anything, and it all fizzles. And they usually like wasted a bunch of resources to try and get their graveyard where they want it, and then you blow it up. So that's why I really like Thraben Charm at instant speed. Plus it has a couple other things it can do, like destroy enchantments for like ley lines if they're on the board, or if they have a big creature, because you have the ability to deal damage equal to twice the number of creatures you control to a target creature. So if they have a big 10/10 and you have 5 creatures, like, okay, cool, I can hit it with a Thraben Charm. Then this is something else I've been adding, a nice little board wipe, especially if they're going wide on artifacts. You run into this in some of the colorless Eldrazi decks. You run into this even sometimes people are feathering in Phyrexian Crusader. So this one is spicy. Let's go ahead and look at Phyrexian Crusader. This is something I ran into. I know I shouldn't be sideboarding for a specific card, but if people start to run, because they're so scared of Boros, more and more red and white protection, this gets around that. Also having that ability to get rid of, if they're creating a bunch of artifacts. So there, again, there's an Eldrazi deck that makes a bunch of, well, it's more of a colorless deck, artifact deck than anything, but it creates a bunch of artifacts, and they're all cheap. They're like 1 or 0 or maybe 2, and then they make constructs, and then the constructs get really big per every artifact that you get. So being able to put this as like an X equals 1 and then just blow up the whole board of all of their artifacts, everything, is really nice. It does take out everything that you have, so you need to make sure that you're either going under the number, the CMC of the cards that you have on your board, or you don't have anything on your board. You know, let them build a state and then blow it out. So they can also work with the mirror match, for instance, if they're going wide. So it's just another board wipe. I do feel personally like a board wipe is required that's a little bit more powerful than 1 damage to everything. So that's why I've been adding the Wrath of Skies to the sideboard. So this is what I was running with at the tournament. It didn't go very well for me. I went up against a 4-color elementals deck. We can do a visual view here. So this was this is close to the deck that I was facing. It had a couple other cards in it that I didn't see. I think I didn't see them play any One Rings. I didn't see. I did see the Prismatics. I saw the Solitudes. I saw the Risen Reefs. I didn't see any Omnath in theirs, but they were running Flamekin Harbinger. So when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an elemental card, reveal it, then shuffle your library and put that card on top. They also had this Voice of Resurgence, which is whenever an opponent casts a spell during your turn or when Voice of Resurgence dies, create a green and white elemental creature token with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. So they would have that combined with the Risen Reef, which is whenever Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, then put it into your hand. So it's a good land generation. They're just generating a bunch of land, and then they're getting a bunch of elementals into their hand. So they just had the ability to just keep go wide really quick, put things in the graveyard, pull them out with things like Flamekin Harbinger, and then because of the Kahira, which is their companion, each creature card in your starting deck is either a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast. And it has vigilance, it's a 3/2. Each other creature you control that's a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast gets a 1/1 and has vigilance. So everything's getting buffed off of that card. And so, yeah, they just managed to go wide on me. There was not much I could do. Anytime I would kill something, they ended up making that the elemental creature token whose power and toughness were equal to the number of creatures. So then all of a sudden now you're dealing with like 5/5, 6/6, 7/7 creature out there as soon as you kill this. So there was no like good way to remove this, maybe except exile. I could have I could have like chained to rock or static prison this. That would be the only way to get around that token. So it was a rough match. I ended up just losing 2-0 to it. The person running this deck actually ended up going into grand finals, and then grand finals won with the Domain Aggro deck. So if we go here, let's go to modern. Let's go to the modern meta. The winner was running sort of Domain Zoo. We'll do the visual view here. So Domain Zoo, is all about getting the 5 colors with Leyline, running Scion of Draco, which just does nasty things. Each creature you control has Vigilance if white, Hexproof if blue, Lifelink if black, First Strike if red, and Trample if green. And then if you have Leyline of the Pack, each non-land permanent you control is all colors. So anytime you play a card, it's going to have all of those features from Scion of Draco. So it's a pretty nasty aggro deck. I like it. I'm actually a fan of this deck. I have most of these cards. So I have all the Lightning Bolts, all the Ragavans, all the Orcish. I have most of the lands like Flooded Strand, Arid Mesa, Blood Crypts, Sacred Foundry, Steam Vents. So I'm really just out here having to snag like a Temple Garden, a Xander's Lounge, a Lush Portico. The Wooded Foothills are really the only lands I need to grab. Oh, I also have the Flages. And then, so I would just need to grab like Leylines of the Guild Pack, Leyline Binding, Scion of Draco, Stubborn Denial, and Territorial Kavu. And then this Tribal Flames is another interesting one. To target creature or player where X is the number of basic land. Yeah, so you just have a 2 mana, 5 damage card there. So that's some of the stuff on the sideboard. I have most of this too. I would probably need to snag some Obsidian or some Pyroclasms and the Consigned to Memories, but I have everything else here. So this deck is pretty sexy, but that's the deck that ended up winning the tournament. And it's just all about getting that 5 colors and getting the synergy off of Territorial Kavu, as well as the Scion of Draco. Then you have a lot of control with Leyline of Binding, Stubborn Denial. And so it's a pretty good deck. I like it. I like it a lot. And yeah, that kind of rounds out that day. It was a little frustrating. Didn't make it past round 1. Did my best. I'm taking a look at my deck. I'm trying out some different things in the main deck. And the big thing that we have coming up is we have Magic Con in Las Vegas in 4 days from now. I will be traveling there. And I do believe there are RCQ events. I was a little sad that there's 2 local RCQs that I'll be missing. So what I'm going to try to do is enter myself into at least 2 RCQs at MagicCon and see what we can do there, so that I at least feel like I didn't miss out on the opportunity to try to get my second bid. And then we have 2 more RCQs the weekend after that I'm going to be attending as well. And those are really my last chance to get my second bid for Q1. I would like to go to both RCs next year, or Q1 of next year. And as of now, going to 1 is still not bad. I'm excited to go to at least 1, but I'd like to go to both if I could. And my pocketbook would probably thank me for only going to 1, but it would be nice to just, dive in with both feet, get as much experience as possible. Almost everything in life is a numbers game, right? The more at-bats you have, the more shots, the more, at the very least, experience that you walk away with. And you can change and adapt and do little things here and there that you learned through just exposure. That's why somebody that's been doing something for 20 years is just going to have all these little tips and tricks and things that they can do that somebody that's only been doing it for a couple years is just not going to know. They're just not going to have been exposed to as much as that tenured person. So the only way to get tenure is through exposure and time. And so that's what I'm trying to do is just get as much exposure as I can, practice as I can. So that's why I'm trying to qualify for both. I know I'm probably not going to go very far in both, but it would still be really cool to just get that experience under my belt and keep it cooking and keep it going. And so I'm trying to consume as much experience as I can and knowledge and help. And the local community has been great. So I want to do a huge shout out to my local community of gamers here. A lot of them have been willing to stay late and answer questions and do extra matches or give me insight, play casual matches where, they'll help me with maybe some interactions that I didn't see, as well as talk to me about the matchup and the play field and sideboarding strategy. So just a huge shout out to the community that I play in. It's really, really appreciated. You can't do this stuff without a community. And I'm new and I'm learning and I'm adapting, and I've set a goal, and I'm pretty good at sticking to a goal and being diligent about it and continuing to push myself forward and challenge myself and just learn. And that's what it is. It's about being deliberate with your time. It's about being deliberate with your practice, what you're doing. And that's where you're going to experience the most growth in anything that you do, right? So I always use the example of sports, and I was a big wrestler. And so if I really wanted to get good at a single leg takedown, for instance, I would dissect that entire move, everything from the setup to the reach to the lock to the pull to the pressure that you put to bring the person down, and then how do you convert once you bring the person down to an advantageous position, right? And so you're doing the same thing with magic, right? I'm like, okay, where are my weak spots? Go out, get some experience, figure out where your weak spots are, where your strengths are. Continue to develop your strengths, but then improve on your weaknesses. And having people tell you where those are and helping you through those is really advantageous. But you have to be critical and open to yourself to say, okay, hey, you're doing great, but these are the things that we need to work on, and be real about it. Don't be, don't blow smoke up your own ass, I guess is the best way to say that. Like, you can't fake it, right? You have to be real, like, hey, this is super weak skill set of mine. I'm not doing well here. What can I do to research and get better in this space? And I think this is one of the things I really enjoy about Magic is the different formats, that it's constantly changing, that you never know what you're going to face up against. Even if I face another Domain Zoo deck or a 4-5 color Elementals deck, they might not be doing the same thing as the last person. So there's all these little things that you have to keep in mind. It's strategy as well as your own gameplay and not missing things, and really paying attention to all the interactions that you can, plus all the layers of rules and everything else that goes into it. So it really just, it fires in all the good places in my brain, and I really like it. But going back to what I was saying, is just working on yourself, your skills, and being critical in a good way, in a healthy way. Like, don't beat yourself up. Just be critical and understanding you're not perfect, and that you need to improve in various areas. And there's pro players that aren't perfect. I mean, there was I believe it was the World Championship last year. There was a big flub between two pro players for the finals, right? And so it happens. Things still happen, but all you can do is improve your own skill set, your own lines, your own triggers, your own deck strategy, your own matchup knowledge. So there's just a lot of things you can work on internally that I'm doing, and it's also very helpful to have that community behind you. And so that's what I want to do, is just a big shout out to the community. Thank you for all the help and continued help, and I'm looking forward to 2025 and what that's going to bring. I still have a couple more opportunities here to try to get into the second RC for Q1 of next year. So that would be the Portland and Charlotte. And then we switch to standard, and I don't have a standard deck, and we're going to have to figure out standard next. And that's kind of the exciting thing about it. But I'm going to need to figure out standard, because the next year, 3/4 of the year is standard, because it goes standard, modern, standard for 2025. So we're going to be doing a lot of standard, a lot of arena, and then switching back to modern. We'll have be in a good place with our decks in modern. I might check out this Domain Aggro deck that I've had my eye on, and 3-4 months from now it might be a little bit more reasonable to spend a couple $100 to get the cards I don't have. But for now, it is not something I'm interested in. I'm just really trying to polish that Boros Energy deck for myself. But I appreciate everybody, and I appreciate all of your support. If you are enjoying this content, Magic the Gathering content, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment below, and catch me in my live streams. I do stream Monday through Friday in the morning, usually around 6 a.m. to 10 or 11. It's usually a later start. It's probably like 7 or 8 a.m. Eastern time. But I do stream every morning. We're generally doing drafts in the morning. When this draft season ends, we might switch it up and start doing some more like leagues or something like that in MTGO to round out the season. And then we switch to standard, and we're going to be playing standard. I don't know if I'm going to do another whole like bronze to mythic run when the set changes, just because I think the new set comes out right in the middle of November. So we might switch it up to standard runs or standard tournaments if we can, or things like that. So we'll see. We'll see what we can do with standard, but we'll be playing a lot more standard coming up at after November 3rd. So I appreciate everybody. Do the thing. And until next time, we'll catch you at the table.